All right, guys. So today is the first episode, I guess. We're going to be doing a series where we just go over and deep dive every single Uma and just talk about everything about the character. And that's going to include all the variants that you would have for the character. So in this case, we're talking about Seiun Sky. So we will be talking about Ballroom. They are very similar in terms of like affinities and just deck making and just things like that. But anyways, let's get straight into this because there's not much to talk about besides the actual Uma. So first, real quick, I just want to go over the base stats real quick. Pretty solid. At 3-star, this is just pretty solid, right? 98 speed, 98 stamina, 88 power, 83 guts, 83 wit. This is going to be easy. You take Fuku and you're going to be above 100 in every single stat. Very light work to manage. You're going to have good initial stats to start the run with. If you have this at 5-star, even better, right? She has a stat bonus in Stam and 20% in Wit. Very easy to train. If you're going long, the 20% in Wit is going to be very helpful because if you're going long, it's harder to focus on Wit as one of your main stats. But with this, it's going to help out a little bit. And even if you're not running that, you're going medium mile, this is still going to be useful because in that case, you will want the Wit high and it'll just make it that much easier to get higher up. Aptitude, obviously Turf. She's a C in mile, A. This is going to be easy to run for Track Blazer. 2 mile sparks and you're good to go. Obviously, you're going to be running her as a front runner. You can run her as a pace, even a late surger. I don't know why you would ever do that, but that's besides the point. The actual skills that she comes with, we all know about these skills, right? We all know Escape Artist, solid gold skill for front runners, Vanguard Spirit, this is for long runners, Tail Held High, this is also very useful, Front Runner Savvy, very good. Angling and Scheming, we know what this skill is about, right? If you're in first, you're going to be boosting, right? The same thing goes for Seiun Sky Ballroom version. In my opinion, it's not a huge deal. Obviously, this is the upgraded version, so it probably will be a little bit better. But what I really want to talk about here is the comparison, right? Because obviously, again, if we look, slightly different gold skill, right? Escape Artist again, Leader's Pride you get this time. You don't get Front Runner Savvy with this. She has 14% in Guts. Kind of awkward if you're not running a Guts deck. Other than that, pretty solid. Like, this is a pretty similar stat line to the original one. But what I really want to look at here is the comparison. I have this nice little spreadsheet to show you all. These are going to be other front runners that you would generally see, right? V Bourbon, Silent Suzuka, Top Gun, Maru, Summer Maru, Kita, right? And I just really wanted to focus here and just compare the actual stat line so we can see for ourselves what we're really looking at. If you were to immediately look at this, right, she is one of the few front runners that's going to be able to run all types of races really easily, except for sprint, of course, but we prioritize mile, medium, long over sprint, mile, medium, right? Obviously, if we could fit in the sprint, it would be nice, but again, like with a V Bourbon, a more spread out pink spark stat line, I guess you would call it. You could run sprint, mile, and long as well as medium. It is going to be a bit of a more of a pain in the ass, but again, you can do it. V Bourbon is very good. When it comes to Silent Suzuka, she's not running long unless you really put work into it. She can run sprints, so there's always that. Top Gun, same kind of deal. She pretty much just has what Seiun Sky has, but more of a pain in the ass to get mile because it's D instead. I guess you could run her sprint in the same amount of sparks that it would take to make mile, but at that point you're kind of choosing one or the other. Maru, again, she has a sprint B, medium B, long C. With enough sparks we can make this work again for all distances. Same goes for Samamaru, same thing. Kita, she has pretty much the exact same spread as Seiun Sky here, but has an E in sprint. So, I mean, either way, it's not really making a huge difference. You're not going to be running them sprints anyways. So it's pretty much the exact same in my books. So right off the bat, we can see out of most of the front runners, she is going to be a very versatile, easy to pick for Track Blazer. Like, we're only going to need 2 mile sparks and then we're done with the build pretty much, track aptitude wise. Obviously, people like V Bourbon and Maru are going to be more flexible in the long run because they can run that sprint as well as long, medium, mile. For ease of use, if you don't have a crazy amount of pink sparks, you don't have the craziest spread of pink sparks in the world, you just throw on 2 miles, you're good to go. If we look at the stat bonus, Seiun Sky, 10% Stam, 20% Wit, Ballroom, 8%, 14%, okay? V Bourbon, honestly, has kind of a better stat spread in my opinion. 10% speed, 10% Stam, 10% power. This is just helping with pretty much any track aptitude that you're running. Like you want to run V Bourbon as a long runner, you have the 10% in stam, you have the 10% in speed, which usually long runners don't even have. And then you're also getting 10% in power, which is also just going to be super nice, even if you're not running long. Because if you're not running long, again, speed and power go hand in hand. This is just going to be easy to get those two stat lines up, and it's going to help you really focus on wit. Suzuka, for me, don't really like this. 20% speed, 10% guts, pretty useless to me. Although I will say that the stat spread alone, I do like better than Seiun Sky Ballroom, just because you just get a straight 20% on speed. And honestly, to me, 20% in speed is going to help me get my power up more than 8% in power, right? Having 8% speed, 8% power. Having 20% speed, I throw 3 speed cards on and I'm good to go, right? Maybe some power sparks, easy enough to deal with. Top Gun, kind of awkward. She kind of has the stat spread that only really lets her be a long runner. Obviously, there are many ways around this. You don't have to do that, but it will just make it easier because she just has a straight 20% in stamina and then the 10% in gut. Maru and Summer Maru, these are probably the best stat gross for like a mile medium runner. It's just super easy to work with Umas that have anything in speed and then the rest in wit. And then if you can see for the Summer Maru, it's just an even split down the middle. Kita, 20% speed, 10% stam. That's pretty good as well, considering you're not going to be bringing the Kita card because you're running Kita as an Uma. So having the 20% there is going to be nice just to help your speed get up. This is also one of the only long runners right now that has anything in speed as well as stamina. So that is going to be useful. But again, anything outside of long is going to be a little bit more difficult. But again, 20% speed, anything with 20% speed in it is very like workable for any type of track. Overall, I would say that the stat gross for Seiun Sky and Seiun Sky Ballroom are kind of difficult to work with. But again, that's not really the main point of her. We will go into why she is very good, but stat bonus wise, kind of awkward. In my opinion, the regular Seiun Sky just has way better stat bonuses than Ballroom. And I mean, if you're running Ballroom with a Guts deck, this will be actually pretty good for you. But in my case, I'm not running Guts decks, so this will be a pain in the ass for me. 14% in Guts, if you are tapping that Guts button, is going to help get your power and speed up since Guts upgrades power and speed. So I can see Ballroom Seiun Sky having a huge advantage with a Guts deck, but really falling short when it comes to any other type of deck. And I think if you're going to run like a speed wit type of deck, I would just run Seiun Sky, the regular one, just for the ease of use, especially compared to people like V Bourbon or Maru, who just have really good stat bonuses, who have anything but long. While for an actual long runner, for a long race, I think it is a tie between Kita and Seiun Sky because, I mean, one's putting 20% in wit, one's putting 20% in speed. So it's really just a difference of how you build the deck there. And it's just a simple swap out. I feel like both of them are pretty similar. The speed will help you obviously get your power up, but with a 20% growth in speed, your speed is really going to run away from your power if you don't come with power sparks. While if you have 20% in wit, you'll just be balancing your speed out while you tap wit lots. The problem with that though is that if you are running long, having the 20% in wit, you're just not going to be tapping wit as much, but when you do, it will be very good. Other than that, if we look at the actual base stats, base stat, max stat wise, it is pretty standard. I'm not going to take too much time to really look at it. You can pause the video and really look at it if you want to, but I'd say overall, it's pretty standard. I mean, comparatively, the only one that really is lacking is like Top Gun because her speed is low, but again, she does have the highest stamina here. So do with that what you like. She also has a pretty high wit, pretty high guts comparatively. I think this is actually the highest guts. So if that's something you're looking for, you can consider that. But otherwise, Seiun Sky, Ballroom Seiun Sky, pretty standard. There's not too much to talk about here. But for the next thing that I find very important here is the unique inherited skills. Now, these are a little bit blurry. My bad, the screenshots were a little bit iffy, but this should be fine. It looks fine to me. I guess we'll see in post. But anyways, if we look at it, again, 4-second base duration. If we take a look at these, right, base duration 4 seconds, base duration 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds. So overall 4 seconds is like, it's not, obviously there are people who have higher base durations for their actual innate skill, but I mean, so does Maru. That's not a huge deal. And then Ballroom Sky is also 5 seconds, which is the highest that any of these ones go. But what I really want to look at is what the skill actually does. So if we see angling and scheming increases acceleration by 0.4, this is the same thing for redshift. Top guns is only 0.3, although it does have a second effect. But other than that, she is the only one that has an actual acceleration skill, obviously other than redshift and then flashy landing, right? So now, why might I say that angling and scheming, especially front runner wise, is better than redshift, which is, they're pretty similar in terms of like what they do. They have the same increased acceleration for the same amount of time. My main thing here is that angling and scheming just procs a little bit better than redshift does. If you can see, if you're in the first half of the pack, not worse than 5th place, on the final corner or beyond, your acceleration will increase, right? If you're in the first position or on any corner in the late race or beyond, your acceleration will increase. I'd say the only differences are that redshift can proc for like pace chasers, but for a front runner, which is more than likely what you're trying to do if you're making a parent with Seiun Sky or just running Seiun Sky, this is just going to be way more reliable as an actual skill. And the reason is because this procs on the final corner or beyond, this procs on any corner in the late race or beyond. So as long as you're in the front, which is the plan for front runners regardless, you're going to be taking off right at that last part and just sprinting down the line, getting distance from everyone else, while redshift is going to proc a little bit earlier and just not hit the same. It's just less reliable in terms of just winning out. You're going to have a lot better of a time just taking a crazy lead versus having redshift is either going to proc at the beginning of the corner, which is either going to be too early or too late. Angling and scheming is always going to proc when you need it on that last part of the race. If long as you're first, you're taken off. So that's all I really have to say for redshift and angling and scheming. Break it down, which is Seiun Sky Ballroom's version, is going to have increased target speed and increased acceleration, and then have a trigger 2, which also increases your target speed. So assuming that you're able to proc off both triggers, this is going to be a super strong skill. If positioned toward the front on the late race, increase velocity with high spirits. If the straight is on a backstress, also increase. Yeah, so you're just going to be taken off very fast. If we look at Summer Maru's skill, it lasts the exact same amount of time, increases target speed by 0.35. They both do, but it doesn't have that second condition, so it doesn't have that chance to have that extra boost, right? Another thing is that Summer Maru's skill literally does not proc unless you have a recovery skill, and that recovery skill has to be used while you're in the front. So there's just a lot more conditions to proc off a skill that pretty much does the exact same thing, just a little bit worse. So in this scenario, Seiun Sky Ballroom's skill is just going to be better. If we look at the other Uma skills, it's pretty much the same story with everything else, right? 5 seconds, 0.35. If you're in the first position during the second half of the race, your speed will increase. That's cool and all, but I would rather have the same target speed increase plus acceleration plus the chance to actually get another 0.35 of just increased speed. Now, V Bourbons is actually pretty good during any mid-race corner. If you detect another girl right behind you, your speed will increase and your stamina will recover. So that's going to be really easy for front runners to have because they're in front. Pretty much everyone's going to be behind them at all times. So what does that mean? That means we're just going to get some free stamina recovery and increased target speed of 0.35, 5-second duration. Now, ideally, you'd want to have this as like an inherited skill for one of the Seiun Skies, right? Because these two skills are very different. One procs late race and is meant for you to keep that lead and just run away from the rest of the competition, while this one is helping you mid-race stabilize during the mid-race and keep pushing forward and keeping that lead that you already have. Top Guns isn't bad. This is giving you target speed, acceleration, so it's not that bad. It's a pretty standard skill, though. If you're competing for the lead on the final corner or beyond, your speed and acceleration will increase. So this is going to help you out dueling-wise when you're fighting for that first-place position at the end of a race. And then Kita's is if you're in the front of the pack, your speed will increase on the third corner if it's a second half of the race, or alternatively, your acceleration will increase near the end of the race. So that means you do have two triggers, but only one of them is going to go off. So it's either one or the other. So it's either 5 seconds of increased speed or 5 seconds of acceleration and speed. All are getting outdone by the effects of like Seiun Sky on both. Although this is like still like a solid skill to have. It has a very specific time and place that it actually procs. So it's kind of a same situation as like redshift of why I would take angling and scheming or break it down over that, because these are just always going to be useful and they're always going to proc at around the the same point of the game or of the race, while these are going to be a little bit more like situational. Obviously, Redshift is a little bit worse of a culprit than Kita's, because Kita's is fully built for front runners if you're in the front of the pack, right? Obviously, front of the pack doesn't mean first place, so you could use it for a pace chaser. But overall, if I were to have Seiun Sky in a career as a racer, as an ace, I would consider probably having Kita and V Bourbon as inherit skills. Obviously, for like the upcoming CM, you wouldn't want to have Kita, you wouldn't want to have Maru, just because of how the racetrack is in the final corner. You're just not going to be able to use those skills to their fullest potential, and that's where a skill like angling and scheming is going to really outshine these two skills, because it's always going to proc just late race on any corner instead of the final corner, or my acceleration will increase near the end of the race. I don't want acceleration near the end of the race. I want to have it late race. So that's all I really have to say about skill wise. I think comparatively, inheriting wise, Seiun Sky, the ballroom version, angling and scheming, break it down, are just super solid. Inheriting wise, racing wise, I think they outclass most of the main front runners that you're going to see. Obviously, these aren't every single front runner in the game, but these are the racers and skills you're going to be seeing more than not comparatively to other front runners. So another thing I want to talk about real quick here is the affinity. This is super easy. Seiun Sky, Ballroom, Seiun Sky have the same affinity towards the same Umas, so we don't need to go over both of them. Super simple to pull up. Special Week, Mino Top Gun, Kita-san, TM Opera O, Rudolph, Nice Nature, Rice Shower, even Gold Chip. These are all going to be solid options for legacies when you're just purely going for affinities. So if I were to start parent looping, I would definitely pick up Top Gun. I would definitely pick up Kita. This is what I have done for my Seiun Sky. I think the only difference is that I did have V Bourbon in there just for that overall affinity, because V Bourbon just works really well with any type of Uma, I find. So 100% though, I did have Mino Top Gun as one of my main parents. I did have Kita in there as well as like a grandparent, I think. Anyways, though, that's super easy to talk about. The next thing I want to talk about is deck building. Now, there is quite a few decks that we could go with Seiun Sky, and of course, it's so situational. Like, you can do so many things with decks, depending on what your sparks are, depending on what growths are. I'm going to talk about the regular Seiun Sky for this one. You could apply these same things for the ballroom version, but I think overall, if you're going to go ballroom, just go a guts deck with some speed cards, maybe a power card, probably some stam cards, whatever. I'm not the guy to ask for when it comes to guts decks. Anyways, there's two sections of the decks that you could go when it comes to Seiun Sky. One of them being the long version, and then one of them being the medium mile decks. Okay, so the examples I'm going to show, you can sub these in for any of the cards. I just want to show it as like what you can do, but again, all these cards are going to be replaceable. This is more about what the type of the card is instead of what the actual card is. So the first and easiest deck to make here is just going to be a Trip 2 deck, which is just going to be 3 speed cards, and then we're going to go 3 wit cards. Super simple, right? Obviously, this is like super meta version of the deck, but again, these are all replaceable. You can swap out any one of these speed cards for whatever speed cards you have, whatever wit cards you have, you can swap out. But if you were to have all of these cards, this would probably be the strongest one for Trackblazer. Now, obviously, you would probably have to focus Power Sparks, but again, this is easy to test. You would need to run this deck one time, and you would figure out pretty easily what you're missing here. The next version of the deck that we could go similar to this is a Trip 1-2 deck. So you can either sub the wit card out for a PAL card. And by PAL card, I pretty much mean Rico. Of course, you could think of going the Team Serious route as well. That's also a PAL card, very useful. But for this example, we'll use Rico. I think Rico is definitely going to be your strongest bet here. So if you have this card, abuse this card, especially for Trackblazer. And obviously, if you didn't want to go this, you felt like you wanted the more wit, you could easily keep the wit card and swap out a speed card for the PAL card. And of course, you would just have to make up in Sparks, or you don't. This is still a pretty solid. I could definitely see you maxing all 3 stats with either one of these, whether the Rico is replacing the speed card or the weight card. Doesn't really matter. This is going to be a super strong deck as well. Now, what if you don't have a PAL card? Well, you're just like me, and that would be a simple fix. All you would have to do is just do a double speed, triple wit power card. Now, for power cards, I'd pretty much only recommend this card, maybe Nishino Flower, but I would recommend Marvelous Sunday just because she has that initial stamina. So, because essentially you're replacing the Rico, you're going to try to just get as much stamina as you can that you would normally get from Rico, from anything that you can. So, Marvelous Sunday would be a great option here. This deck also has a very high race bonus, so you'd be able to just gain so much stats from the races. This is 60%, I'm pretty sure. 30 with these two cards, 40, 50, yeah, that's 60, bro. That's a lot of race bonus. If you're able to build this deck, I would definitely recommend trying it. This would also allow you to ease up on some power sparks. You could probably take off a power spark or two just because you have this card and you have the option of actually tapping the rainbow on this card. Again, you're not going to be tapping the power that often when you do get a rainbow on Marvelous Sunday, but it's there. This is still a very good deck. This is still very valid if you don't have the PAL card. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about long decks. Pause. Anyways, the main focuses here is just getting your stamina up. So what I would recommend here, probably every time if you had cards like this, is to just go triple speed, right? She has no growth in speed, so you want to have triple speed here. It's just going to allow you to not have to worry about power as much, not have to worry about getting speed sparks. You'll just be able to raw dog speed and just get it to where you need to without having to try much. So if I were to go this, obviously if I had these cards, if I had all three of these cards, I would definitely go this. If you don't, these are again replaceable. Don't think that these are the must-have cards that you need. These are just 3 speed cards. Pretend these are just 3 speed cards instead of seeing Kita, Fuku, and Top Road, right? Obviously, if you have the 3 of those, use those. But in most people's cases, that's not the case. So what we can go here is a 3 speed, 1 PAL, 1 stam, 1 wit. This is going to be super useful. This is going to be super easy to get your stamina really high up without having to commit too much to actually tapping stamina. Obviously, having the 1 stam card being Super Creek is going to be very helpful. It will help you just boost up your stamina, that last 100, 200 stats that you need to maybe get it to 1100, max it out, even just over 1000. And then for the wit card, that's just obviously going to help out because we just need as much wit as we can, especially in long runners where wit is a lot harder to come by. So if you were just wanting a generic long deck, I would definitely consider going something like this: 3 speed, 1 PAL, 1 stam, 1 wit. Now, okay, maybe you don't want to go 3 speed. You think that's a little bit too much. Easy enough. We can just go double wit. That's also perfectly fine, right? You're getting double wit. You're going to be tapping wit more. You will get speed out of that. You can also make up for it in speed sparks if you absolutely feel like you need to. But again, this is going to be very strong. Now, okay, maybe you do want to run triple speed, but you still want to have 2 wit cards. You can totally just remove the Super Creek card and just replace it with a wit card. Easy enough. Double wit, trip speed, 1 PAL. Rico is definitely enough to get your stamina over 800. And if you bring enough sparks, you can get that over 1000 really easily. You higher a little bit, 1100, light work. Now, if you don't have the Rico card, it will be a lot more difficult to run an actual long deck for Seiun Sky. But again, there are very valid ways around that. My main one that I want to go over and the last one that I want to go over is going to be a trip speed, double stam, 1 wit deck. This is what I use for a lot of my long runners. And that's just going to be something like this. Now, obviously, I know most of you don't have the Symboli Rudolph card. Your main replacement for that, the main card I could see most of anyone using is the Manhattan Cafe card and then just borrowing Super Creek. Obviously, these 3 cards are interchangeable. You can pick whichever speed cards you need at the time. But I think if you don't have the Rico card, this is probably going to be your best bet. I wouldn't stray too far away from something like this. If I were to, maybe I would put a power card, and that would just be Marvelous Sunday. And then at least if I'm going this, I will have a slightly higher race bonus. Like, this is probably already pretty solid race bonus wise. Like, this right here is giving you 60% race bonus instead of 55. So if you do feel like you want to have a little bit more race bonus, taking out the Manhattan Cafe card is also very valid. You could just use Marvelous Sunday again as the replacement for Rico. Just make sure you come with those sparks to make up for that. Now that's pretty much all I have to talk about deck-wise. So the last thing I want to go over is some team trial examples. So in order to take a look at those, we will use the handy tool that we have, and that is the in-game resource of looking at the leaderboard. So if we take a look, the top guy has a Seiun Sky that is UG1. As you can see, this is a very strong Seiun Sky. This could probably be used for the CM. I don't know if this is actually going to be used for the CM, but if they did, I can see this doing very well. Angling, Scheming, Firm, Course Menace, Rushing Gale, Killer Tunes, Ignited Spirit Power, right? Like this is pretty strong. I can see this either for the CM and just ended up being a UG that they wanted to use on team trials, or actually being a CM horse for the upcoming CM as S in front. So this is just super solid. What we really want to look at is the deck. Now, this deck is very interesting because it is a 2/2/2 deck. Although instead of having double wit, they have a Rico card instead. Why did they pick the Rico card? Well, if you look, they have 990 stamina, and as you can see, there is no stamina sparks. So that leaves them with plenty of room to throw in a speed spark to make up for the fact that they only have 2 speed cards, excluding Kita, so they don't even have that huge Kita rainbow to rely on. So I can definitely see why they threw in speed sparks here. Not a huge amount, right? Like, it's like 1 or 2. It's like 1. Not a huge deal. They have more wit sparks, which does make sense. I would want to have wit sparks to make up for the fact that I only have 1 wit card here. And then double power as well. This is also the reason why their stamina is high, because every time they touch power here, their stamina is going to go up. And because Seiun Sky has that 10% in stamina growth, she will just benefit that much more from actually pressing power. Now, would I recommend a deck like this? Probably not, because these are all SSR MLB cards, so like I'm assuming most of us don't have this type of selection to have. So if I were to go a deck like this, I would sub out one of the power cards for maybe a wit card instead, just to free it up so I can either go another speed card, another wit card, whatever, right? At the end of the day though, they did run 45 races, so they're going to be getting huge stat lines regardless of what they're actually running, especially if they have a high race bonus, which they do. Our next example is going to be Neb. So if you're on Twitter, I'm sure you've seen this guy around. This guy is nuts at the game. He has both a Seiun Sky Ballroom and a Seiun Sky. Let's take a look at the Ballroom one just because there isn't as many examples that we can fall back on. As you can see, didn't even run a Guts deck here, although the stat line is a little bit wonky. 700 in Guts, 700 Wit, Power, stamina, max out speed, like nothing really touches 1,000 here. But again, it is an SS plus. So, and I do want you to notice that they did run a deck like this, right? I did say run a Guts deck. I still stand by that, and the reason I'm still going to stand by that is because this guy ran 48 races. Most of us are not running 48 races in a career and having something successful come out of it. So I would just stick to the Guts deck for this. This is an insane build, but again, if you wanted to go something like this, I mean, it's possible. They've done it. This already has some pretty free-to-play cards in it. Like 2 of these you should have MLB. Rico, I mean, I know a lot of people who have MLB Rico. Fuku, Kawakami, NTR, you can borrow one of those. I'm sure at this point you have a speed card that's MLB that you could fall back on to use, and then worst case you run like Tosin Jordan. So this is definitely possible. You could just high roll a little bit higher than him with slightly worse cards, and then you could probably get a similar result. Although what I really want to look at here is the actual UG version of this, and that is going to be the triple 1/1/1 deck that I was talking about, where it's triple speed, 1 power, 1 POW, 1 wit. 41 races, very manageable. That is something that we can easily do without just inting our run. As you can see, this is a pretty nice stat line. We could do better with this, but again, UG is a UG, so who am I to judge? When it comes to sparks, it is just pretty much power and wit. Yeah, it's only wit, so there's a 9-star wit in here, and then the rest are in power, so an even split. This is the type of sparks that I would be running for this, although if I was running sparks like this, I would run trip wit, trip speed, and then call it a day. Obviously though, with Seiun Sky, you do want a higher stamina, so having that Rico card there is just going to help you immensely. Having that power card there is just going to help you get that skill, the Killer Tune skill for the CM. It's just going to help you in other ways, getting stam from tapping the power, right? There's a million reasons why you would run the power card over the double wit card, but again, if you want to see your wit a little bit higher, go the double wit. Although having 1,000 wit, anything over 1,000 wit, having anything over like 800 wit, I'm pretty sure is just OD at that point. That's just stat padding. So keep that in mind if you're trying to build an actual CM version. Like anything over like 1,000, 1,100, like maxing out wit is not a huge priority when you're actually trying to make an ace, because anything past that threshold is just stat padding. So don't worry too much about it. Okay, and for our last example here, we are going to take a look at the guy who's in 3rd right now, Gadsu, and this is more of the type of stat line that I would be hitting when I build for Seiun Sky. Another thing I want you to notice real quick is that how these examples, UG1, UG2 maybe, are like realistically the highest you're going to see Seiun Sky, especially just the way her stat growth is. This is a difficult UG to hit, especially if you're not running straight meta cards like this. So as you can see, trip speed, 2 wit, 1 PAL. This is literally the exact same deck that I made in the deck builder. So this is just going to be your meta monster deck setup if you have this. If you don't, obviously you can just replace whatever cards you need to replace. It's not a huge deal. But again, this is the stat line I'm looking for. If we take a look, this is just wit, power, power, wit, wit, power, power, right? Exactly what I would go. Although they did use a little bit more power than a 9-star power, and they took out a Wit Spark. Honestly, running-wise, this is probably really good because then you can just have max speed, max power, and then whatever is left over is all in your wit. Then you really don't have to worry too much about like stat padding or anything like that, like I was talking about with the last one. So don't worry too much about this. 39 races, 38 wins. Again, super solid. This is just a good example of how you don't need to run 40 races in order to get a UG. Although I will admit that this is a monster of a deck. This is a type of deck that a lot of you guys are not going to be able to run. But again, replacing these cards with the ones you do have is still going to yield you similar results, maybe a little bit worse. Maybe you high roll and get like a similar result to him with shittier cards. This is all very possible. Don't stress about it too much. But yeah, that's all I really have to talk about. The last and final thing I do want to go over though is the agenda. Now, I'm not going to really talk about options when it comes to agenda because this is the only agenda I would realistically run. Now, one thing I want you guys to notice here is that technically you obviously do not need to do all of these races. Some of these are optional. But in total, this is going to give you 43 races. This includes the debut and the Twinkle series. That's going to be 43. 20 G1s. Obviously, you're probably going to end up hitting 19 G1s because running 4 in a row before summer is risky. So I would really only recommend doing this if you have the items for it. I would only do this if you're in a scenario where you can fully recover anything negative that might happen, anything negative that can happen from doing 4 races, while also having enough energy and items to be able to carry you through all 4 turns of the summer. So if you're in that one specific scenario, then I would fully recommend doing 4 in a row. Otherwise, I would just take this day as a rest day. So don't stress about doing this race that much because it's not that worth it. If you have the items for it, if you're confident enough that you're going to be able to survive that, go ahead. It will definitely help you, but it is not necessary. Anyways, as you can see, we are going for triple tiara here, and then the mile epithet as our main G1 epithets. Obviously, as well, we have the double Queen Elizabeth. You might be asking why I'm not running triple crown. Well, that's because of the Tenno Show Spring. Now, assuming you're not building Seiun Sky for long, this race is going to be a huge pain in the ass. You are probably not going to win this race because your stamina probably will not be high enough to win this race. You need like 600 stamina while your other stats are also beefy. This is just not a realistic race to count on when you're going like medium mile for Seiun Sky. When you're going long, you could consider doing the same version of this just with Triple Crown instead. But again, I think this is just so much easier. It's just so much more worth it. There's just so much less risk that you need to worry about. And you get to still run the Tenno Show. And worst case, you lose it, it's not that huge of a deal. Because if you know you're going to get 2nd, 3rd, 4th place, this is still going to be more worth it skill points wise than doing a G3 or a G2. If you think you're going to get like 5th or lower, then I would recommend just subbing this out with one of the G2s, G1s that are on this day instead. But again, if you're feeling confident enough where you can either win the Tenno Show Spring or just get 2nd place, 3rd place, go ahead, do this race. It will be helpful for you. Another thing that this lets us do is run the Arnie McKinnon still because we do have that A in long, so we might as well just run it since there aren't any other G1s to do late December, early December, unless you're a dirt runner. So this is just going to be helpful having the Arnie McKinnon there. And then again, if you're feeling like you're in a good spot, you can recover from it. You're not going to lose out on the Twinkle series by having like a bad mood or just no energy. Go for this race. This is very swappable. Let's say you're not confident on your long races. Maybe this isn't a rival race and the other races are. There are plenty of options. G2, G3s give you the exact same amount of stats, the exact same amount of skill points. The only difference is the fan difference that you gain, and we're not really worried about fans, so this is easily replaceable with literally any of these other races that you see fit. And assuming that the stayer stakes at this point when I'm doing the race doesn't have a rival race on it, I will easily just change it out for one of these G3s. It's not a huge deal. But again, I just feel like I don't have the items to deal with doing 4 races in a row. I am going to skip it. but you do need to realize that this one is a lot less of a risk because there isn't something super important the next day. Sorry, I didn't mean to have that race there. It would be like this. You wouldn't want to do fucking 7 races in a row. Anyways, this is going to come with a lot less of a risk because you have this turn, 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 blah, 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 all the way until summer for you to really worry about you getting your mood back up and having to just fix whatever negatives came with doing 5 races in a row. While senior year is going to be a bigger risk because if you don't have the items, you're going to be stuck in Twinkle Series with a bad mood, with skin outbreak, with whatever debuff you got, right? So again, if you have the items to do this, take this race. If you don't have the items to do it, consider doing classic year instead. I would definitely in a run do one or the other though. There are very few times when I don't do both in one year. I'd say about 98% of the time I'm either running 5 here, 5 here. There's no really in between where I don't run 4 here, I don't run 5 here, I don't run 5 here. I would need to have a really shit and consistently shit shop for me to actually fully just be like, fuck that, I'm not going to do any of those races. Because again, having those races in is going to be the difference between you getting like an extra 100, 200 rating points, which could be the difference between you getting S plus and UG. Other than that though, that's pretty much all I want to talk about. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any suggestions for Umas that you want to see covered in a video like this, let me know. I will definitely work on it for sure. I will be putting up another vote for the next Uma, so stay tuned for that. And other than that, I hope this helped you kind of get a better understanding of how to play Seiun Sky, how you want to look at Seiun Sky as an actual Uma. Again, she is very strong racing wise. She's also a very solid parent. So this is something that you definitely want to have just as a parent, just as an ace, just in your back pocket, just so you can run this whenever you need to. But other than that, lock in.